Hello and welcome to Public Speaking 105 Logos or Logic. I'm Jason and I'm going to be telling you about how to use logic in public speaking presentations. So to review what we did last time, we spoke about story structure using the 3 acts in Once Upon a Time. This was a lesson for the professional development, and it's a very cool way to tell a story. Today, we're going to be talking about logic, and we're going to be using Descartes. I think, therefore I am, cognito ergo sum, and that is the question of why am I, and how do I know that I exist? So Descartes tried to answer that. We're going to be coming back to this lesson, this video at the end of the presentation. There we go. Okay, so logic is the study or use of reasoning to distinguish good reason from bad reason, which are called valid or fallacious arguments. So there's valid or invalid, and there are also fallacious arguments, which aren't good reasons. And reason is the qualified use of the word. Not everything is reasonable, even if we can make an argument for it. So the reason definition is the process of thinking about something in order to make a decision. And this is where we go back 500 years to Descartes. René Descartes was a French philosopher and is considered the first of the modern rationalists. Descartes' writing lay at the foundation of the Enlightenment that put a human-centric view of the universe. The Enlightenment emphasized science and logic while opposing absolute monarchy and religious dogma. And he said, "It is necessary at least once in a lifetime to doubt all things." And indeed, doubt and radical doubt is what Descartes has become known for. Enlightenment was an idea that reason and evidence of the senses was a primary source of knowledge. An era of scientific revolution and rapidly advancing ideas based on detailed observation and deductive reasoning was the scientific idea that process and repetition was important for finding the truth of things. So I said that Descartes was a skeptical guy. Indeed, he's a radically skeptical guy, and that's a philosophical view that questions the possibility of what is real by doubting the existence of everything. And in his search for truth, Descartes says, "Cast everything aside that you know. Start from zero. I know nothing," and that's where you begin. So this question of how do you know anything is a good question. What if an all-powerful demon or a super-powered AI could be fooling you? Maybe there's a movie this reminds you of. We're going to hopefully get back to that in a second, but what if what I see isn't actually what's there, like I'm dreaming, and I know I've done that, and I've seen things that aren't real. And it wouldn't take an all-powerful being to fool me because I'm just a little person, and I've seen movies where they've got people with superpowers that could do that. So what if everything's an illusion? So Descartes imagined the ultimate level of doubt in the form of an actively deceiving, all-powerful entity. And even though an all-powerful entity is deceiving him, Descartes finds that it is impossible to doubt that he exists. So even if Descartes assumed that nothing exists, he still knew that he exists. And he wanted to know how he knew that he existed. And even if a super power was creating an illusion, Descartes argued that no one could be deceived unless he existed to be deceived. So even if there was a superpower being who was fooling him. He had to exist to be fooled. He said, there is a deceiver of supreme power and cunning who deliberately and constantly deceives me. In that case, I too undoubtedly exist if he deceives me. And let him deceive me as much as he can. He will never bring it about that I am nothing. So long as I think that I am something, I think that I am something. So after considering everything very thoroughly, I must finally conclude that the proposition I am, I exist, is necessarily true whenever it is put forward by me or conceived in my mind. I think, therefore I am. Now, we talked about popular cultural cultural relative phenomenon that ties into Descartes. And if this were Jeopardy, we would say, what is the matrix? And to answer what the Matrix is, not only is it a popular movie, but it's a very good story, and it goes something like this. Once upon a time, machines took over the world, and every day they powered themselves using electricity they harvested from humans they grew in vats. And every day, the human minds were kept active in a fake world called the Matrix, which simulated life in 1999. Until one day, a human named Neo chose to take the red pill and woke up to learn the Matrix wasn't real. And because of that, there was a whole trilogy that occurred. This is a really good classroom drill. This is the Once Upon a Time story template that we touched on at the beginning of the lesson, the story structure that we recognize from the Once Upon a Time, used for a movie, used for somebody's favorite book. So this is a very great rendition. Sometimes we don't have our own stories to tell, but we can tell over stories that we already know or like. And if students are given the opportunity to choose a story that they like to share with the class, this is a very good template and game that they can do that with. So radical skepticism. What is real? Are we in the Matrix? The first certainty, you cannot doubt your own existence. I think means I must exist to think, means I am. I exist. An interesting note of Descartes is he saw very clearly that all truths were linked with one another, so that finding a fundamental truth and proceeding with logic would open the way to all science. And logic, this deductive reasoning, is a persuasive tool. And it's one of the three classical persuasive tools, being ethos, or expert knowledge, pathos, a passionate story, and logos, which is reasoned proof. And we're, of course, talking about logos or logic and the reason of proof. So deductive reasoning, which is the type we're referring to, is an argument is sound if is both valid in form and the premises are true. Logic systems are sound if and only if every formula can be proved and the system is also valid. So I can say that gravity exists because everything falls. And if I drop an apple, or I drop a can, or I drop a feather, or I drop a sock, everything falls, therefore gravity must be true. Now, if we find something that doesn't fall, that would question the law of gravity. So that's a deductive reason. If everything falls, then there's gravity everywhere. A premise proof. A premise is a statement that an argument claims will induce or justify a conclusion. The proof of the conclusion depends on both the truth of the premise and the validity of the argument. If I tell you that all birds can fly, and you show me a penguin, then it's not true that all birds can fly. Here are some premise proof chains. A true premise. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. A false premise. I think this looks familiar. All birds can fly. Penguins are birds. Therefore, penguins can fly. That's false, because we know penguins don't fly. Inductive versus deductive thinking. Inductive, it starts with observing the world around and making a generalization that leads to a theory. I'm looking around and I see that all fish can swim, so I would say that all fish can swim. Deductive reasoning is a theory and predictions. A theory leads to predictions that you test by experimenting. I think that all fish can swim, so I'm going to predict that fish can't walk. And I'm going to test every fish to see if there's a fish that can walk or a fish that can fly. And sure enough, there are fish that can kind of walk and there are fish that can kind of fly. So my theory would have to be updated in deductive reasoning. Now that you know that you exist, what do you do with existence? And here is a great tie-in to our preceding lesson, the Introduction to Meaning, where we spoke about Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning, meaning as the primary motivation for man. And we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is in some view a ladder to meaning. So I guess our question that we should think about is, what do we do with existence? And in one aspect, it's very meaningful to transmit knowledge to receivers, to teach people, to teach students. So it's a very meaningful thing that we're doing with our existence. And maybe we're doing some other things also. Look, here it is. Here's Maslow. And we can see that self-actualization is fulfilling meaning. And there's Frankl, okay? So we exist to find meaning. A primary motivational force of an individual is to find a meaning in life. Maslow's ladder is how to find that meaning, making sure that you fill in all the bases so that you can jump off. Here's an interesting game. I don't know that we're going to play it, but we'll talk about it. How do I know game? I know I exist. How do I know you exist? There's some good questions to think about. So how do I know you exist? Descartes shows that I know that I think, I know that I'm real, but in this online environment, I can be even less sure that other people online are real. So how do I know that they exist? Even if they were real in front of me, how would I know? And one way that I think that was a proof given to me from a friend studying philosophy was, if I teach you something that you don't know, then you know that it came from an external source and you know that source. So I know somebody exists because they taught me something new. They put together a string of words that I would never put together. They passed along something that I know I didn't know. Like if I tell you the capital of Minnesota is St. Paul, and if you didn't know that before, then you would know the capital of the state of Minnesota is the city of St. Paul. And now you know I exist because I told you that. Dreams are another question, because that's something that we know is an illusion, and we know that's not reality, and we all experience vivid visualizations and maybe even hear sounds from a world that we know isn't real, unless it is. A couple of other good classroom games are code names. You can, in an online setting, or if you have placards, you can have students refer to themselves and each other by maybe their street name or the city they live in, the title of their favorite book, their favorite ice cream. So that's code names. In Model UN, we have the student refer to themselves as countries. So the format of this game is a student speaks, gives proof, and chooses the next speaker. How do we know something? I don't think we're going to do that, but that's a good idea. Nope, we're not going to do that. Nope, we're not going to do that. Nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Jason, can you send us the presentation, please?
Yes. So thank you very much for everyone for watching this presentation on logos and using logic in the classroom. We're gonna say goodbye to our YouTube audience and get back to our